It's Not You, 27 Wrong Reasons You're Single by Sara Eckel. Picture this. You're on a first date at a cozy Brooklyn bar, the kind with just the right mix of charm and character. The conversation is flowing nicely. You've covered the usual territory: jobs, neighborhoods, family stuff. Nothing earth-shattering, but pleasant enough. Then your date leans back, gives you this studied look, like they're solving a puzzle, and asks a question that cuts right through the pleasant small talk. Not, "What makes you come alive?" Not, "What's your go-to karaoke song?" But, "What's wrong with you?" The question lands like a slap. Your first reaction is shock, maybe even anger. But then something colder settles in. A creeping sense of recognition. Because if you're honest, it's the same question you've been asking yourself at 3 a.m. for years. This is how Sara Eckel opens her game-changing book, It's Not You. Eckel, a thoughtful writer who doesn't pull punches, spent most of her adult life wrestling with this toxic question. She'd bought into the story our culture loves to tell. If you're single and don't want to be, something must be fundamentally broken in you, something that needs fixing. Here's the thing, though. This book isn't another manual on dating strategies or how to fix yourself into relationship readiness. It's something far more powerful, and honestly, more rebellious. It's a self-compassion manifesto. A calm, methodical takedown of the 27 most common myths society throws at single people. Myths that often completely contradict each other. By the time we're done here, you'll understand something genuinely life-changing. The search for love isn't about becoming worthy through self-improvement. It's about recognizing the worth that's been there all along. We're going to explore the difference between fragile self-esteem and genuine self-compassion, and replace the exhausting myth of constant self-improvement with the radical truth of self-acceptance. Ready to quiet that critical voice once and for all? For years, Sara Eckel lived her life as a construction project. She called it Sara 2.0. Her mission was simple but exhausting: build the perfect, most lovable version of herself. She was convinced that if she just worked hard enough on her flaws, love would show up like a prize at the end of a very long obstacle course. She followed every piece of advice to get out there. She invested countless hours and dollars in yoga classes, gym memberships, and acting workshops to boost her confidence. She learned to cook impressive meals, volunteered teaching writing to disadvantaged kids, and even bought her own apartment to prove she could commit to something. She was checking every box, following every rule, and honestly, she was becoming happier, more confident, more accomplished. But she was still single. And on quiet Saturday nights, the same question would creep back in like an unwanted houseguest. What's wrong with me? This is the trap so many smart, kind, amazing people fall into. Society hands us this endless, dizzying menu of possible flaws. One day you hear, "You're too picky." The next, it's, "You're not picky enough." You're too intimidating, but also too needy, too independent, yet somehow suffering from low self-esteem. These messages come from everywhere: well-meaning friends, concerned family members, and a multi-billion-dollar self-help industry that profits from your insecurity. They create this impossible maze with no exit. They convince us that love is a puzzle, and our personality is the broken key. If we could just smooth out our rough edges, polish our surfaces, reshape ourselves, maybe then we'd finally unlock the door. But what if the entire premise is completely wrong? The book's first revelation hits like a breath of fresh air. Finding a partner isn't a reward for personal growth or good behavior. John Gottman, a respected marriage researcher who can predict with scary accuracy which couples will divorce, discovered that everyday neuroses have almost zero connection to marital success. We all have our weird quirks, our insecurities, our baggage. The secret to a happy relationship isn't having a flawless personality. It's finding someone you click with. Think about the happily married people you actually know. Are they all perfectly zen, emotionally evolved beings? Of course not. They're cranky and neurotic, and sometimes order weird drinks, just like everyone else. But they found someone who loves them anyway. The difference, Eckel realized, comes down mostly to timing and luck, not character flaws. This brings us to one of the biggest myths the book destroys: the idea that you can't love someone else until you learn to love yourself. We're constantly told that low self-esteem is at the root of all our problems. The solution? Stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself how amazing you are. Volunteer at a soup kitchen, not primarily to help others, but to feel better about yourself. Build this impenetrable fortress of self-worth. The problem, according to psychologist Kristen Neff's research, is that self-esteem is fundamentally shaky. It only works when you're winning, when you get the promotion, when your crush texts back, when things are going your way. But what happens when you actually need it? When you get rejected, when you fail, when you're feeling like garbage? That's when high self-esteem offers exactly zero protection. People with high self-esteem feel just as terrible as people with low self-esteem when things go wrong. It crumbles under pressure. But there's a much more resilient alternative: self-compassion. Self-compassion isn't about convincing yourself you're amazing. It's simply treating yourself with the same kindness you'd show a good friend. It's the voice that, after a painful rejection, doesn't say, "You're a loser," or "He's a jerk." Instead, it says, "I'm so sorry this hurts. It's okay to feel this way. Everyone gets rejected sometimes. You're not alone." Self-esteem requires you to feel special and above average. Self-compassion just requires you to be human. It recognizes that failure, imperfection, and pain are part of everyone's experience. With self-compassion, you don't waste energy on pep talks or tearing others down. You already know you're okay, regardless of what anyone else thinks. It's a steady warmth, while self-esteem is a flickering candle that any breeze can blow out. From this foundation, Eckel starts dismantling the other lies, the endless parade of twos that get weaponized against single women. Let's talk about the myth of being too strong. Ever been told you're too intimidating or too independent? This narrative suggests that the very qualities that make you successful in life, your intelligence, confidence, self-sufficiency, somehow make you undateable. It paints men as fragile creatures who can't handle a woman who owns her own home or changes her own light bulbs. Eckel shares the story of her friend Suzanne, a successful communications consultant whose boss once warned her that her confidence might intimidate people. Later, male friends echoed this. Confused, she decided to run an experiment on a bowling date. She asked her boyfriend for advice on everything: what to eat, how to bowl, and deliberately threw gutter balls. He loved it. Even a friend who witnessed this commented, "I think he's really good for you because you seem more vulnerable with him." Suzanne remembers thinking, "So this is what I have to do? I don't know if I can keep this up." The book argues this whole premise is ridiculous. Playing helpless doesn't give you an advantage. It just filters out men looking for an equal partner. And this idea that successful women have aggressive, domineering personalities? It's a cartoon. Truly successful people, regardless of gender, are usually masters of making others feel valued and important. Plus, the data completely contradicts the doomed career woman myth. Women with college degrees are actually more likely to marry and less likely to divorce than their less educated peers. One fascinating study found that for every year a woman waits to marry up until her early 40s, she actually lowers her risk of divorce. The older the bride, the stronger the marriage tends to be. Those qualities you've developed, maturity, independence, wisdom, aren't obstacles, they're assets. Then there's the myth of being too much. On one side, you're too strong. On the other, you're too desperate. Society celebrates marriage as this ultimate achievement, but if a single woman admits she actually wants it, suddenly she's pathetic and needy. This creates an impossible bind, forcing people to perform single and loving it even when they're genuinely lonely. Eckel admits she never truly loved being single. She wanted a husband. And wanting that made her feel ashamed, like she was betraying herself and womankind. But the book offers a powerful reframe, Our need for intimacy and connection isn't weakness or immaturity. It's literally in our DNA. Neuroscientist Amir Levine explains that our brains are actually wired for partnership. Feeling a void when you're alone isn't a personal failing. It's a legitimate biological need. The flip side of too desperate is naturally being too available. This is where dating games come in. Play it cool, keep them guessing, never let them know how much you care. Act like an ice queen to maintain interest. But this, the book argues, is based on a completely backward idea of confidence. Real confidence isn't about withholding kindness or making someone feel insecure. Think about the most genuinely confident people you know. They're generous with their attention and aren't afraid to be kind. As researcher Brené Brown discovered, the core of all real connection is vulnerability. The courage to be imperfect, to say I love you first, to invest in something that might not work out. Playing games might keep someone ambivalent around longer, but as Eckel asks, why would you even want that? Finally, there's the most common accusation: you're too picky. This is the ultimate fail-safe criticism, because it's almost impossible to disprove. Eckel tells this funny story about her friend Caitlin, who went on a date with a guy who ordered a Shirley Temple. When she mentioned this amusing detail to a friend later, the friend exploded. He could be the love of your life, and you're hung up on the Shirley Temple? Caitlin felt crushed, suddenly convinced her pathological pickiness was the problem. But here's the thing the book makes clear: the Shirley Temple is never actually the reason. It's just a concrete detail standing in for something much harder to explain: lack of chemistry. When you tell someone a date didn't work out, they fixate on the trivial detail, the drink, the weird laugh, whatever, and conclude you're being too critical. But you know the truth. The spark just wasn't there. The only standard that really matters, as Caitlin put it, is this: I want to find a guy who delights and surprises me as much as my friends do, but I also want to make out with him. Every happily married person has a spouse who meets that standard. Settling for less isn't mature. It's unfair to both you and the other person. The book offers this beautifully simple definition: you're settling if you think you're settling. So if it's not our flaws, not our strength, not our desires, and not our standards, what's left? We're left with the reality of loneliness and the shame surrounding it. The book argues that loneliness is our culture's ultimate taboo. We can talk about depression or addiction, but admitting loneliness feels like the ultimate failure. Eckel quotes this devastatingly beautiful passage from Zoe Heller's novel Notes on a Scandal about the drip of long haul, no end in sight solitude. It's a feeling many know intimately, but few dare mention out loud. But once again, science offers liberation. Neuroscientist John Cacioppo explains that loneliness isn't a pathology. It's a biological alarm system, just like hunger or thirst. It's your body's natural signal that a fundamental need, social connection, isn't being met. Those pangs you feel aren't signs of deficiency. They're signs of a functioning internal warning system. The question becomes not how to eliminate the pain, but how to relate to it differently. Eckel shares her own breakthrough, which came during a yoga class. The teacher instructed students to hold a difficult pose and, instead of labeling the burning sensation as pain, to simply feel it without judgment. Immediately she got it. The problem wasn't the sensation itself, it was the story she piled on top. Ugh, I hate this. When will it stop? When she just allowed the feeling to exist without the narrative, it wasn't so bad. She started applying this to emotional pain. On those bleak winter nights, she wasn't just feeling loneliness. She was layering on shame and self-criticism. I'm a loser. I'm a failure. What's wrong with me? She was, as Buddhist nun Pema Chodron says, trying to put out a fire with kerosene. Gradually, she learned to stick with the original feeling, simple loneliness. She'd tell herself, I feel lonely right now. That's okay. Everyone feels lonely sometimes. She started treating that tight feeling in her chest as what it was, a neutral sensation that would eventually pass. This is mindfulness. Not getting rid of thoughts, but seeing them clearly without being swept away. This brings us to the book's beautiful central metaphor, borrowed from Tibetan Buddhist scholar Chogyam Trungpa. He suggests our true nature is like a golden statue buried in mud. Our culture, with its constant pressure to self-improve, convinces us we're made of mud and must somehow transform into gold. We think we have some deep, fundamental flaw that needs to be eliminated. But the Buddhist view is radically different. Everything is, at its core, basically good. We don't need to become a golden statue. We already are one. The work isn't changing our fundamental nature. It's simply hosing off all the muck and shame and self-criticism that we, and our culture, have piled on top. When we remove those dark layers, we're left with a simple being that needs no improvement. This realization finally set Sara Eckel free, and it came not when she met her husband, but before. It happened after another painful rejection. A guy named Dan, whom she really liked, ended things to be with someone else. A week later, her beloved dog died. She was 38 and fell into deep despair, convinced she'd always be alone. In her grief, she created a story about why Dan chose the other woman. The other woman was probably more politically active, more dedicated to causes. Then, instead of spiraling deeper, a wiser voice kicked in. If you feel bad about not being politically active, then be politically active. She decided to organize a building-wide stoop sale to raise money for a political cause. That sunny Saturday, selling old clothes and books with her neighbors, she felt something strange she couldn't quite identify. Later, sitting in a cafe, it hit her. Oh, this is what it feels like to feel good about yourself. After all those years of digging through mud, she'd finally struck that little gleam of gold, her own basic goodness. It wasn't there because she was attractive or talented or special. It wasn't there because she'd finally fixed herself. It was there because she was a human being. That's it. Shortly after, she met Mark. On their first date, he asked the dreaded question, "How long has it been since your last relationship?" She deflected, but a few weeks later came clean, telling him she hadn't had a boyfriend for nearly a decade, despite really trying. Mark just shrugged. "Lucky for me," he said. "All those other guys were idiots." And that was it. To him, she wasn't a problem to solve or a puzzle to figure out. She was just a person he was falling for. He wasn't looking for some cultural ideal. He just wanted her. The most radical idea in It's Not You is the profound relief that comes from letting go of the question, why? For years, Sara Eckel and millions like her operated under the assumption that being single was a riddle demanding a solution. If she could just find the right answer, the right theory, the right flaw to fix, she could unlock the life she wanted. But the book's quiet wisdom is that there may be no answer. And that's not tragic. It's liberating. It frees you from the exhausting, endless project of self-improvement. It lets you step off the hamster wheel of self-analysis and just live. In a world obsessed with optimization, with life hacks, 5-step plans, and relentless pursuit of a better self, this book is a quiet rebellion. It suggests that maybe the most courageous thing you can do is accept yourself exactly as you are, right now. Your life isn't a waiting room. It's not a dress rehearsal for some future better version that starts when you find a partner. As Melanie Notkin says in the book, when a friend worries about her being alone forever, she replies, "This is the rest of my life. Right here and right now." This message matters more than ever. In the age of social media, we're constantly bombarded with curated highlight reels of other people's lives. It's easy to see their engagements, weddings, and baby announcements and feel like you're falling behind in a race you never signed up for. This book is the perfect antidote to that pressure. It gently reminds you that you're not in a competition. Your journey has its own timeline, its own rhythm, its own wisdom. So how can we apply this wisdom to our own lives? Here are 3 practical actions inspired by the book. First, The next time you feel that familiar pang of loneliness or self-doubt, just notice the story you're telling yourself. Is it one of those 27 wrong reasons? Are you thinking I'm too intimidating? Or, I should have married that guy from college? Don't fight the thought. Don't judge it. Just label it, oh, thinking. Like Eckel in her yoga class, you can separate the raw feeling from the painful story layered on top. Second, practice self-compassion. Next time you face rejection or make a mistake, resist the urge to either beat yourself up or inflate your ego. Instead, ask, what would I say to a dear friend going through this exact situation? Chances are, you'd be kind, gentle, and reassuring. Now try offering that same kindness to yourself. Finally, find a way to connect with your own basic goodness. This doesn't have to be grand. Like Eckel's stoop sale, it can be small and simple. Volunteer for an hour. Help a neighbor with groceries. Create something just for the joy of it. Do something not to meet someone or improve your resume, but simply to remind yourself of that golden statue that's been there all along. Ultimately, this book isn't about finding a partner, it's about finding peace. It's about the profound freedom that comes when you stop searching for what's wrong with you and start recognizing what's been right all along. Your life, right now, in this moment, isn't a problem to solve. It's a story to live. And it's already whole. We've journeyed through the heart of this book today, but there's a difference between hearing a story and living it. If these ideas resonated with you, I genuinely encourage you to pick up a copy of It's Not You. Reading it is like having a wise, kind friend sit with you and quietly say, "You're okay. You've been okay all along." It's an experience, and it might just be the one you need. I've left a link in the description, and if you enjoyed exploring these ideas with me, make sure you're subscribed to Billionaire's Bookshelf. We're a community dedicated to learning and growing together, one book at a time. Hit that subscribe button, and let's continue this journey. See you in the next summary.